Today's Human Systems Notes, we're going to get physical in memory of Olivia Newton-John. She had a song, "Let's Get Physical." Now, it's because of a couple things that I wanted to do today's Human Systems Notes. So what I'm doing on a 90-day stretch is I got to really realizing that I think the reason people don't understand, and I mean people in tech themselves, don't seem to understand what's going on in terms of adoption friction and why some people may not be so excited about AI and why other people might be really excited about the possibilities of AI. I got to realizing, oh, people don't understand. And it's not that it was really new to me, but being in healthcare for a career and the type of healthcare clinician I was very human development, human systems oriented. My clinical doctorate is in physical therapy, but I was a physical therapist a long time before that. Before that, I was a certified athletic trainer. Before that, I was into health and fitness and was a personal trainer. So I've always been very enamored by the human condition on all levels. There's an intelligence there that's always piqued my interest, my desire to know. And it took me a really long time to realize there's a lot of human beings that they sit here in their human body and they could care less about it unless it's hurting. That took me a long time to realize. And my exposure early on in mind and body, one through my father's chronic pain and me witnessing young, before it was in the news exactly mind body work or anything, witnessing how he was trapped in an identity of pain that he then assumed and lived through more than anything anyone could physically find for him. And if he went to more and more doctors, somebody would find something to make a buck off of. Somebody would find something to treat, because guess what? All of us, have something that's not quote unquote normal, not necessarily expected. I don't know if it's still the stat, but when I was learning and in training in clinical, the statistic was 30% of people walking around with no complaints could walk into an MRI and we could find a disc herniation. But they don't have any complaints. So as long as we adapt and movement is how we adapt physically, we can pretty much work around because we have a natural intelligence. So I never quite could understand why human beings would have a body and yet be so disinterested in understanding it, until I started diving into working with people with pain as a physical therapist. I had started it by saying, well, we're just going to optimize the body, right? If somebody has a dysfunction or if somebody's in pain, we could just optimize ourselves. And that's sort of what got me into sports and fitness and wellness and athletic training to begin with, because I saw it as a bridge between the broken bodies and the ones working at the other side of the spectrum, which were optimized. So anytime something since then has come into my vernacular, into my world, into my syntax, into the conversations I was having that was saying optimization, I really wanted to understand. Did it want to optimize? Did it want to replace? Did it want to neutralize something? How was this optimization being sold? Very, very early on, how it was being sold. And I guess that's why I got into the AI conversation quite earlier than my peers. Not because I was like, ooh, how could I use this technology to make money? But it was because they were talking about intelligence. And if anyone can remember, the original cell was very much We're going to revolutionize healthcare. And then they dropped that. They dropped that like a hot potato. I found that really interesting. And they moved a lot into marketing. And that's when I got into data analytics with my marketing background from being an entrepreneur, and got into wanting to know how were they training these large language models, because I understood human systems. I understood, I could see the parallel, and also I think in a very system wide and critical, so I can top down and bottom up think. That's my gift. That's my gift from God in my human design. So I could see how they were modeling, and I understood language in the human brain, and I understood that they were creating a large language model to compute things. And I understood computation was kind of a binary, this or that. Like, it was all coming back to me. I was finally using that integrative math too. Remember that integrative math too? If you learned it, we learned it in the New York education system in 10th grade, but it was integrative math too, and they had you doing all of these like models of like circles intersecting, and like we learned about and we learned about or, and we learned this was the crossover that finally made sense to me, because you go through school and you're like, why am I learning this? Like, where am I going to ever use it? By golly, it's called critical thinking. If they would just have explained math as critical thinking, so many people in that classroom with me at 15, 14, 15 years old would have had some clue why the hell we were integrated too. Because we needed to understand the language of mathematics before we can go into something which was integrated three, such as geometry, which was all about nonverbal symbols, forces, vectors, things that were known to us, but not always understood by us because they didn't have a structure yet. Like we had to create the structure. We had to create the mathematical models to explain vectors and physics and forces of nature. This was extremely interesting to me, but not until years later. Not until years later when I learned yoga and, and self-realization, and could hold the inanimate, the non-mechanical, the non-physical, the non-material in some sort of organization by my what? By my human intelligence. And I got there through physical body intelligence, through the physical body intelligence. I very much was a kinetic learner. I was a dancer. The way I learned and made sense of dance was I would watch the teacher, and I would bring myself, I would connect with her movement. It was the rhythm of what she was teaching. So in tap dance, they would say shuffle, shuffle, side shuffle, step. Shuffle, shuffle, side shuffle, step. A very left-brained, language-oriented person would be learning that, like, do the shuffle, like a very logical, then put your leg out to the side, do the shuffle that way, and then step your foot down. What I did is I would listen to her. I listened to her tap dancing. I heard what she was saying, but when she would say shuffle, shuffle, step, shuffle, shuffle, side step, shuffle, shuffle, step, shuffle, shuffle, side step, you hear the tone, shuffle, shuffle, step, shuffle, shuffle, side step. She was teaching dance. I had a wonderful teacher. She was on Broadway. Barbara Frankel, Coupe Dance Studio, Rockland County, New York. she knew to teach dance, and probably because she learned, because dancers, premier dancers, are kinetic physical learners of the art. You understand? She understood the way to teach it was to make it rhythmical, was to make the music of it. And for the body, and if she's teaching children dance, if she's teaching younger people dance, less physically developed bodies, to embody the rhythm, the tone, then they could then, she understood the human body had the capacity, our human systems, healthy enough, had the capacity to convert that without anybody telling us how to analytically analyze that, how to break it down into forward movement physics vectors that then turned into side vectors. I mean, I could teach dance like that, but that's not the way you really become a prima ballerina. You understand? You had to feel the dance. And I think a big reason why people are not understanding the power, like all the enthusiasm that engineers and people in tech have for AI, and I'm not pro or against AI. We need to understand it. I'm concerned a lot of people inside tech, especially today, did not grow up the way even Steve Jobs or Bill Gates grew up. They were physically learning. They were playing. They were playing as kids. They might have turned into people who were not as coordinated and socially ostracized and totally intrigued into robotics and technology, minus the physical body. They might have gotten trapped in their heads. But I guarantee you the reason they reverted to that was because when they were kids or somewhere along the line, their physical intelligence was stunted. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. Because if not, they would have tried to create compute to make sense in the complexity of the human design instead of tried to reduce compute to such a fraction of the human design. And they would have then inspired the creation of motor learning to be really against the human design motor learning. Because the human design motor learning is motoric, is based in movement, is based in our physical layer of intelligence. I wish I could have a conversation with Bill Gates. Maybe one day he'll have a conversation with me where I can ask him where he got disconnected with his body, where it stopped making sense. And I believe that his obsession with the human genome and viruses and our immunological intelligence and vaccines and all of the ways he tries to put his health intelligence, I can still see he's limited. He hasn't embodied it. He's still very left-brained. I see his disconnect with his right brain in how he's approached all of that. And when I see Elon Musk and his intelligence, he doesn't invent a thing. He just knows exactly what will work. And then he grabs it and he takes it and he basically decides who to place in what to market this thing. And they're not necessarily illogical thing, like it's not an illogical thing, but you can look at him and you can see somewhere along the line he's not connecting all the dots. Like there's a social barrier to him. there's a negative experience. There's a negative human experience of embodiment with him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be throwing himself around in the way that he does physically. Like, I don't think he has the interoception capacity that he has in maybe operational systems and engineering and how to create and construct a human experience. And when I look at Sam Altman, I see the same thing. I guarantee I would love to have a conversation with each one of them and ask them where along the line that they disconnect from their human embodied experience, because I see it in the technology that they push and in the ideologies that they push and in the conversations they have. And it has nothing to do with cognitive intelligence. All three of those people have a high level of cognitive intelligence, but I can tell you it's not at the same capacity of their physical intelligence. There is something children lose when we don't let them play, when we really organize and structure their play, because we have some left brain analytical cognitive intelligence and knowledge base about how that should work, because it worked that way in an experiment in a sterilized environment to study one or two variables at play. Listen, humans are complex, but we're not complicated. Humans are complex, but we're not complicated. The systems we create because we fail to invest in human intelligence before we give up on it and decide, let's just be cyborgs and deal with the things we understand already, and digitize and externalize and hand over our critical thinking because it's easier. And we can all just live that way. And I sometimes sit and I think, it really is really hard to live in the body of some of these tech millionaire and billionaires. It really is hard to live in their body. Like, I'm not saying, like, I can see what they do. They butcher it. They add so many different health tech gadgets, biometric measurements. That one guy, what was his name, that like took his like kid's blood and put it into himself. Like, human beings that attempt to separate the right and left brain and disqualify the language of the right brain and our ability to get physical through the right brain, and those who refuse to live through their kind of ecological nonverbals. Do you remember that? I learned like 80% of communication is nonverbal. I've been living off that. Like, it is very evident. We have decided to take that 80-20 rule that somebody like marketed well, and since it's really productive, because basically what we should have gotten out of the 80-20 rule was that, oh my God, humans waste a lot of time. What the hell are we wasting time on? And what somebody else did was decide, how can I make a lot of money off of this? And take that 20% and focus all of the humans completely on being like really into that 20% and what they're doing during that 20%. But like most of our human experience and systems of health and well-being, they run in that 80%. The problem is that 80% was getting hijacked. When we had that book, the 80-20 rule and all that, like, I don't even know that guy's name. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know that guy's name. And that's my point. We kind of hijacked the hypothesis and then sort of made it move into like, how can that be productive for us? In a very left brain way. instead of saying, that's great, we can figure out how to use that. But like, why are we wasting 80% of our time? What are we doing instead? And had we taken that route, we would have said, and this was before social media, we would have said, oh, we're stressed out. Oh, some of us are taking drugs instead. Some of us are trying to come down from the coffee we were on. Some of us are trying to come up and go get some cup of coffees. And then it cuts into our track of thought, or we're becoming more and more grouped into identity cultures instead of actually exploring our own culture. And why are we doing that? Like, we lost a lot of intelligence. And how does that relate to our physical bodies? Well, when we're sitting there having to be so productive in a certain way, and being productive and production in the industrial complex have been made to be analogies and similes and all of this relationship with what? Making money for someone else, usually. I mean, they sell us, we're making money for ourselves, but we're usually, majority of us, are stopping this human intelligence to make sure we're following someone's left brain logic only intelligence, which completely centralizes their egoic view of the world. And so mainly we stop moving, we stop using our physical intelligence, we stop playing. We stop playing, and we begin to mask, and we begin to perform to fit a very thin layer of cognitive intelligence that isn't even ours anymore. It's been handed over to machine learning analytics. So it's complex, but we're really not complicated. We just have to go and play. We have to be out in nature. We have to listen, we don't need any more research. I once heard Gabor Mate say that, and he said it in a couple of interviews. He's like, we don't need any more freaking research. We're ignoring 80% of that research because it doesn't fit into like what we don't want to know that. Listen, we, the collective we, actually do want to know that. There's a very small 1% of the population that doesn't want us to know that. And I think a lot of that is not some villainous intent, although I think they figured out how to control that towards them. I don't think those people, I think a lot of the 1%, like really look at the people. Look at the physicality. Look at the physical body of that 1%. They're not. I mean, they may be performing health, but they're a mess. You gotta be a mess to literally be like so obsessed with people following you around with cameras 24/7 that nobody wants it anymore. And you know what family I'm talking about. Nobody wants it anymore. And so they've literally stopped making their show just about them and started making shows about the people who are attached to them. So they've stopped using their physicality because it don't sell no more. Nobody wants it. And they've started selling the people they're attached to, who they're married to, who they make businesses with, like their own children. They're passing the buck into the next generation. That's extremely sad to me. So that's my human systems note for today. Let's all get a little bit more physical, because there's just an intelligence there that nobody's got to give you a dime to get access to. Nobody's got to There's a lot of information in books. There's a lot of information in public libraries. There's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information that your AI can re-aggregate. But there's intelligence. There's a large language model inside every single one of your cells. And your different organ systems are like the different large language models, like the companies that own the different large language models. I'm going to try to put this in like as much of a technical way as I can for those people who are, I should have started with this because they probably stopped watching this. Natural intelligence. We have large language models. We have yet to see the models that are working off of the right brain intelligence, and we have yet even to get close to what a whole integrated system, world system, global system of the human design can do. So we can't give up on it. We can't just like automate it or replace it. Like if I had my arm cut off, I'm very thankful to technology and maybe Neuralink to let me use that Neuralink for the nerves that used to come out of my neck and would go into my arms. But like that's all it's doing, people. That's all it's doing. When they're taking little organelles, little brain tissues, little cells they're putting now and connecting it to AI, that's a disaster waiting to happen because we don't understand yet the whole brain. Understand? If we're going to take a tissue. So my recommendation is that if you are on the human side of this AI conversation, meaning like you're somewhat concerned for humanity, you're somewhat concerned for like relational intelligence, like wherever you are, whatever industry, you're on the human side of this AI conversation. Get out in nature. Go even inside, even if you can't get out of your bed. Move. Just move and be present. There's so much. Yeah, you're going to feel you're stiff. So what? Explore that. Write about that. I'm going to be connecting the dots on this. So that's today's human systems note. That's my advice. That's my natural intelligence advice for you. It's not anti-AI. It's so that you understand what you're being sold. Listen, if I want to work with private practices. I want to work with small businesses. I want to work and be this sort of hybrid intelligence level to connect the person with their practice in healthcare and their intention in community health. Because big health ain't going to listen to anything I'm saying. They're going to do their own thing. And if you listen to any of the physicians or the physical therapists or the occupational therapists or the social workers working in big health, they're telling you that system is collapsing. And it's not going to happen it's not going to happen overnight where you go and all the hospitals in your area are locked up. You're just going to want to stop going to the hospital. But like, I don't want to have to wait for that. I don't want to have to wait sitting out in community health. Sitting out with social determinants of health as being part of that, with the social workers and the public health policy makers and the civic activists and everyone who kind of enables community well-being. I don't want to be waiting for the surge of people who don't have a hospital to go to anymore, who don't have physicians who are able to save their life. Because I can't do that out in community health. I can just help you understand how to live in this kind of crazy transitional era. Take it for what it is.